Oh, hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. My name is Josh Herman. Welcome to Gnomon's Art Jam. Today we're going to be working on some projects that we've been working on several streams, but it's nice to be here and I'm excited to be working for a couple hours with y'all. As always, if there's any issues with the sound or the video quality or anything like that, please let me know so that I can fix it and make sure that everything is working. I see a couple of people already saying hello in the chat. Hello to you. Nice to see y'all here. I do have some music going on in the background, so if it's too loud, just tell me to turn it down and I'll do that for y'all. All right, let's just get started today. Just kind of change it up a little bit. I know sometimes we get a lot of people coming to the stream who've maybe never seen an art jam before. If that's true, if you're one of those people, I'll give you a quick primer on who I am and what we're going to kind of be talking about today. So quickly, I figured I'd do a quick intro for those of you who have never seen this before. But my name's Josh Herman. I'm the CCO of Gnomon, and a little bit of history about myself. I'm a Gnomon graduate. I graduated in 2009. My first job was at Legacy Effects, formerly known as Stan Winston Studios, working on movies like Real Steel. I eventually worked on several of the MCU movies there, working on the Avengers, doing the Hulk and Iron Man. Ended up going over to work at Naughty Dog for several months on Uncharted 3, moving back to working at Marvel Studios, where I worked for 5 years, creating several different versions of concepts and models within the visual development department. And then afterwards, transitioning over to being a character art director and character creative director at Cloud Imperium Games, where I worked as that title, building and running a character art department for a video game, and then now working at Gnomon. So if you have any questions today about anything industry related, whether it's about working in games, working in film, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and I'll try to do my best to answer them. Additionally, any questions about process or anything like that, I will be happy to answer as well. This music is not the right vibe. Let's see what this one does. Stefan, hello. Atik, hello. Nice to see you all here. All right, today what we're going to be doing on Art Jam is on Art Jam, struggling to talk, is we're going to be sculpting on some characters. So let's get this out of the way. We'll pull this down to the side. All right. You all should be seeing my ZBrush here. I'm going to remove this graphic out of the way. We're going to switch to this full screen view just so you can see a little bit more of the screen. Hopefully the buttons are bigger and easier to see. Did I check out the UE5 video? Daniel Hollingsworth is asking from Facebook. I did. It looks amazing. I started the download right before the stream. Obviously, I haven't been able to play with it yet or get into the sample files, but it looks amazing. Very, very cool stuff. And definitely something I want to play with at some point for sure. Looks really, really cool. As you probably just saw in chat, Adam, one of the Gnomon representatives, is here today, so he'll be able to answer questions in the chat and just generally be around. So we've got a lot of people hanging around today. If you got any questions, we'll be here. To give you a highlight of what we'll be working on today and kind of what we've been working on over the past several streams, this is the main hero we've been creating, but we're working basically now on a cast of 4 characters. So we'll be creating and working on at least one of these today. My plan right now is to work on this character. But we have our hero, sort of a hero and anti-hero character. We have a companion. I'm going to scale these down so they appear to be somewhat in the right size range. I was thinking somewhere around this height, who we worked on last week a little bit. They have a creature or a mount that would be part of their crew. That would be this sort of dragony thing, but apparently it wants to stick. It's like a dog. It wants to stick its head right in between the two of them. But it would be somewhere about this size or so. We'll put it off to the side. We'll just let it creep in like that. It's like a Great Dane. And then we have a mech that we created, a very basic block out of a mech that we created last time. This sort of man or reptiles meets machine sort of a vibe, and that's what we got going on here. And this would probably be around this size as well, something that's pretty big that makes it not easy for them to fight and cope with. We also thought about the idea of having some sort of like a brain being encased in this sort of a sphere or something in here that could be very Krang-like. That was a good suggestion from the chat the other day. And this is kind of the color palette we had generally picked for all of this. So it's hard to fit it all on screen, but this is kind of what you can see of what we created in the past several streams. And I would say Very likely 90% of what you're seeing on screen right now has been made in previous Gnomon art jams. So if you have any interest in watching that, go back and watch some of the previous streams. All right. Before I continue, I just want to make sure maybe some of y'all in the chat can help me. Is the music too loud? Is it too quiet? Or is it working okay? Or can you even hear it? Miguel Ortega says, nice to see it all come together. Thank you, Miguel. I hope you're doing well. We got to hang out and do something soon. I think I'm going to work on the hero character today and just kind of try to get it a little bit further along. I was thinking about doing some pose tests today. That was also something that somebody says too quiet. Somebody says it sounds good. We'll maybe just nudge it up just a smidge. That's a smidge. I was thinking about doing some pose tests. That was something that was recommended to me that somebody would be interested in, and maybe help to kind of get the vibe of what some of these characters are going to be doing. We'll most likely focus on this character for the poses, but just generally good to give you all insight into what we're doing. Now, this character that we've been working on, if you haven't seen it before, has a couple different accessories. Has this sort of pelt that we can take off here, just right now 2 pieces, which will likely be 1 piece at some point. A poncho that they wear, and then several bits of space armor, sort of a probably more hard-ish shelled material here in the blue, and then which is kind of this, and then this like kind of strapping under layered thing as well, which I also kind of like. But this, without the straps, it definitely goes very, very He-Man very quickly, which I'm not opposed to, and that was actually some of the original inspiration for this, but I kind of like this being a little bit busier. Doing okay, but the music is kind of sleepy. This is the Twitch royalty-free fantasy playlist, so that's what we're listening today. I'm sure it'll kick into a little bit of a higher gear at some point. I'll probably switch into like, you know, a synth wave or something like that. This is setting the mood as we get into this. All right, let's go ahead and clone this character. I might just reload the whole character so we have a separate option up. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to load our character. You're just going to see it's added a second one over here. It's the exact same character, just different levels of things being on. And this is because I kind of want to put the poses. Now, I'm not going to be looking for final poses with this, and that's an important thing to note. It might actually be very difficult for me to do that because a lot of these pieces and the ways that I've made some of these costumes is by taking the initial sculpt, which is this piece here, duplicating it, deflating it inside, and then sculpting out of it. So you'll see I basically have this mesh, and this mesh, and they're all using the exact same base mesh, deflated subtly, and placed inside. So that is kind of why they're all on top of each other. But I'm going to try to get some poses just really quickly. What I'm going to do is only show the pieces that I want. I might take this hammer out just so I can get some action lines with that. I don't think I need this tongue. I'm just going to hide that piece. And I'm going to go through all this. I don't know what the... All right, this has lower subdivision levels. That's great. That's this. Yes, also great. Everything else should as well. Make sure everything has lower subdivision levels. I'm not going to care about the detail in any of this. And when you use Transpose Master, which is what I'm about to hit here, it's going to take everything to the lowest subdivision level anyways. As posted in the chat, we do have closed captioning available on our Facebook page. Ooh. Now see, what you're seeing is this isn't really, it's actually lower than I expected. So you can see all those individual pieces. Looks like we're having some weird issues with our streaming. I just got notified that we are, for some reason, had a glitch and then we're not streaming to YouTube. So we're going to have to try to resolve this technical issue really quick. Apologies. Looks like we should be back on YouTube, so apologies. One of those fun technical issues. If there isn't anything, or if you're joining us from YouTube, hello again. Apologize for that. This is going to be a little too low res for me to pose with, just because I can't really see too many of the forms. So what I'm going to do is I could try to send it back, but I don't really need to do that. So I could just come in here to either of these. I guess I'll send it back. Why not? And I'll say, good job. You've done it. And then for some reason, it created a massive cylinder in place of this hammer, or added it there. I'll just pretend that never existed. Okay. What I might want to do is just lower the subdivision levels on all this. You see, this is the very lowest. This is what I was checking, if they all had lower subdivisions. But this lowest subdivision level doesn't really represent the costume. So I kind of want to go, I'm going to save this as a file. We'll call this like pose test. Pose tests. All right. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to delete higher or the lower res geometry here of this one. I come in here, delete the lower res geometry as well. I'm going to delete this one, go a little lower, delete the lower res. So they're all going to be a little bit lower when it goes over to that. Don McCoy, instructor Don McCoy is here. Hello, Don. Hope you're doing well. This one at the lowest is fine as well. I'm really just checking to make sure these are all working. Somebody from Twitch is asking, what kind of material and light do you use while sculpting? Good question. I don't necessarily move the lights around too often when I'm sculpting. I know a lot of artists that do, but I've never really liked using the lights within ZBrush. The basic, or not the basic, the standard materials can receive lighting information, whereas the matte caps do not. I use downloaded matte caps, so you'll just see me bounce back and forth between different types of them, and that's kind of what I usually look for. Just an appealing material, something that doesn't have too much. You'll see within the material settings in ZBrush, if you go under modifiers, the cavity detection, or either that going one way or another can really change the way that your surface looks, because it will either enhance the details if you add too much cavity detection, or it will try to erase them. And what they're trying to do with that is they're trying to mimic certain types of materials, like a clay or something that's shiny, or something that might gather dirt in a crevice, right? I try to get something that's very neutral and has very neutral lighting. So I just use some imported ones that I found on ZBrush Central. I'm just going to save this pose test one more time, and we're going to start doing some poses. Now, obviously, having good reference of an image or what you want to be doing is a really important part of kind of knowing what your pose is going to be. So obviously, you can go to Pinterest or something like that. I'm just going to very quickly search for something like action hero poses. Very quick click, and easy. And you'll find all kinds of stuff like this on Google, right? We can go down the line and find all kinds of things that we want. There's going to be a million different things like this, but having a good idea, or at least a decent understanding of what the pose, or at least the vibe you're trying to get, is important. So I'm going to probably Let's do something like, I want this character to feel a little heavier, and I'm looking for something like a brawling pose or something. A lot of it I'm getting kind of fighting martial arts poses. I kind of want just a superhero pose, maybe. Superhero pose is probably going to give me a lot of Iron Man things. But something in these ranges, like I like this, something like this kind of thing. This is not the pose that I want, but that style of crouching pose is probably what I'll go start working for first. Something that's kind of a dynamic action sequence in the middle of a fight kind of a thing. So I have an idea of my pose. The next things that I've always found to be very, very helpful when you're doing poses is two things. The first thing, and you're going to see me get up out of my chair a little bit here and there, and so you feel free to laugh and giggle if you want, but the first thing is doing the pose yourself. Get up, do the pose, understand what your body is doing. That's a really important thing because you'll try to do things when you start moving around a figure, and as you do that, you're going to find some things are just really awkward, and it's like it's actually impossible to do the pose that you want, and that's going to be an important part of this. The other part of it is going to be, let's see if I can get these groups really quick, because there are so many of these. I might need to create some quick poly groups. So one is getting out of your seat, or if you're at a standing desk, that's fine too, and doing the pose. So I just masked all of these off. So this is all one poly group between all my meshes. These eyeballs, those will go with the head. Hide this, hide this. I'm going to polygroup this so those eyes become a part of that mesh. And all I'm doing is making very quick polygroups, so hiding sections as fast as I can. I can mask a whole region. I'm going to hit Control W, and I'm going to hide it. Mask a whole region. Hit Control W. I'm going to try to get a little bit more finite in this part, though. Just trying to get this last one done. I can't really see that blue one, so I'm going to make that one a poly group. I'm going to just do this one as well, I guess. Show everything. If you hit Control W while you have something masked, it will mask the whole region. So now I've gotten the legs between all of the poly groups, the arms between all the meshes, the torso between all the meshes, the hammer, the head, and then I'll just Control W and that'll get the whole thing. So that's the main things that I really wanted to get before I start posing. There's a little weirdness here. You see these two meshes overlapping. I don't really need this to be part of the head, but I have a feeling that if I start turning the head and this is inside it, it's going to give me some problems. So I'm going to mask all this, Control W, and that'll make that all one poly group so that when I pull this off, the little piece of the head that was inside goes with it. All right, so the first thing that I was saying is being able to do the pose yourself. So getting up out of your seat and doing the pose. And the second thing is having a good understanding of contrapposto. In case you don't know what contrapposto is, it basically means the difference of the angle between your hips and your shoulders. Hips and your shoulders, yeah, that's right. your hips and your shoulders. Just by the way that the body works, they have to be at an opposing angle almost at all times, right? It's almost impossible. I think it might be impossible to create to make them kind of move at the same. Otherwise, the whole character will feel very, very awkward. So the thing that I like to do right away is try to figure out where the balance of the character is. Now, I'm going to zoom out. I'll even give you a bigger shot of what I'm doing. It's going to be weird because I'm wearing these headphones, but let's try it. I'm going to stand over here, move my chair out of the way, and we're going to try to go for a pose that's probably something like he's going to be landing. Maybe he'll have like his hammer in his hand, and he'll kind of be, where am I in frame? Something kind of like this. And so he'll be coming up. So what I'm noticing right now is the angle of where my hips are right here is farther back, and I'm kind of leaning and standing. So kind of bracing myself. I want to get that pose and just kind of do, I'll probably be doing that several times throughout the stream, but it's even though it is uncomfortable, sometimes a little awkward, especially if you are in an office setting, when we get back to office settings with other people, to just watch somebody get out of their chair and make a random pose. If you're ever around or working around animators, you'll notice that happens all the time, all the time, but it is kind of a fun thing. So what I like to do is try to get the hips in position first. So let's go ahead and get our hips in position. We can use the floor if we want here. ZBrush has a built-in floor which snaps to the bottom of wherever the character is. This is a nice thing to use, so I'm going to do that. The first thing I noticed is that I needed to basically create the character and put them in some sort of a lunge position. So let's just start with that. I can lower the character to the floor or attempt to, but what you'll see is as I move the character down, it goes through the floor. As soon as I move, the floor is actually going to adjust in ZBrush. So me moving the character up and down for this pose is not really going to be that important. It's just about creating the separation. Now, the polygroups that I made for this, there we go. Well, I'm going to try to capture all of this. There we go. So now I just made different polygroups so that I'm not splitting the leg and tearing it in some weird way. I can show everything here. I'll go ahead and do the same thing here. Mask one, make them different colors. I don't need them to be separate. So let's get this first leg here. We're just going to mask it, show everything. Control tap. And then we're going to use, I like to use the action lines or the transpose lines. I like to use them because they just feel a little easier for me to understand where the point of pivot is and how far I'm rotating. So you can draw it out like this. I also see people who use this almost as a bone, so dragging and putting it inside. You can do Z-sphere rigging and different kinds of ways to do this as well, but I don't really like to do that. So I had my left foot forward. So we'll try to do the same. So bring this all the way up. I can now put this here because it is kind of in the body. And well, a cool thing you can do with the action lines is if you hold down Alt, so normally it rotates around one point, right? So they kind of work as they rotate around the objects. But if you take this one and hold down Alt while you're hovering over the red while you are controlling, it'll bend it, and you'll see it'll actually kind of warp the geometry. It's kind of attempting to do like a compression, right? A stretch on the top and a compression on the bottom, which is nice to do. It's fast. It can break, as you're seeing, and it doesn't always go exactly in the direction that you want it to, but it is a nice, easy way to get like a knee bend without having to resculpt that. So for a quick pose, this is very likely going to be fine. So I'm going to get this one done. Now, when I say done, I don't mean done. I just mean like phase one is complete. I have moved the arm, right? I have moved the leg. This one is going to be going down and back. And this one will do the same kind of thing here. Put it down. Great. Now you'll notice that the floor automatically snaps to wherever the lowest point is. This is great because now I can continue using this line to adjust. So I can do a couple things. I can grab the whole body and spin it, which is what I want to do. Or I could go ahead and keep adjusting each foot. Since this is a test and there's not a rig and this character is not going to be animated in what I'm doing, I'm just going to rotate this till eventually those feet are going to be more or less along the same plane. Notice that these toes are kind of jacked up here. Let me just mask those off. Go like this. Create a point. Let's do a little piece where we just kind of extend those toes. It's not going to be the total pose. We can still come in here and maybe adjust the angle at some point of how this is working. But that's going to get us much closer to an even level of where that foot is. Let's see, we could also take this, rotate it if we wanted to. But right now, the goal is just to kind of get overall posing, not so much focusing on the elements. So we will adjust that in a minute. Beta Ray Bill, very close. Yes, definitely initially inspired by Beta Ray Bill and still looks quite a bit like him. Good shout out though. All right, next up I had kind of the arms, one of the arms back, and we haven't addressed the hips issue that I was talking about. Now, why are the hips important? Why is contrapposto important? And what is the number one big mistake that I'm making right now? Is I haven't adjusted the hips. The hips and the shoulders always, like I was saying, kind of work opposite of each other, right? If you sit in your chair right now and you bend to the left, right, my shoulder is getting closer to my hip bone, and so just by that nature you kind of see this constant back and forth motion. So if you don't adjust that motion both from the front view and the top view, they very often kind of do the same scissoring action from the top view, you'll get a really stiff pose. So let's adjust that really quick. And how do you know which one should go higher is a question that I get a lot when I talk about this. The question is whatever one is holding the weight of the character the most. Now, in this instance, it could be both, right? But let's just get down and let's do that pose really quick. If I do this, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to just do this little lunge pose till my legs begin to burn. And then I'm going to say which leg is higher or which hip is higher. And I can tell that my body is wanting to take my weight down to this side, which means that side, my right side, which will also be the character's right side, is going to be lower than the rest of the character. Right, and you can almost see that by the gravity, even that we have here. That if there was a big plate here and this is all weighted, it wants to sag this way. Right, I don't want to go from that angle. I'm going to go right here in the middle. I'm going to adjust it. Now I can also come in here and do this. This is why I use these poly groups. Get out of here, hammer. Mask this whole piece. All right. Okay, unmask that piece. And when I do this again, the whole leg is going to move a little bit. That's okay. We're going to have a lot of, this is not a perfect pose, right? This is kind of a test. But what you'll see is all of a sudden you get to see that kind of natural bending happening in how the weight of the character is being held. Now that's going to be natural to happen. And naturally that's also going to make this move the opposite way to counterbalance and to keep it up, right? So this part of the character's core muscles will be tightening to keep them stable. So I'm going to take these pieces, I'm going to mask them as well. I'm going to soften that mask just a little bit, and I'm just going to rotate the whole body this way. And we can do it from the same location just a little bit. And you know what? We're going to do it from the top as well. So I'm going to kind of go back into that same squat lunge pose. I'm going to have a good workout after this. And I'm going to try to evaluate if and what shoulder or hip is going to be forward. So I'm noticing that when I'm doing that pose, I want this character's arm to be back, I think. This one. So if that one is back, meaning from the top view, it's going to be rotated this way. Not that much, maybe that much. You can also go from the center of the body here and rotate along this pole using the center of the white one. Right? So now we can twist this a little bit. And that will allow us to actually do the opposite here. We don't need this here. To rotate the bottom forward. Now the legs that we got up before are going to get a little jacked up here because we got them, kind of out of the way, right? first. But now we need to make sure that they're supporting the weight naturally. So I'm going to hide that, invert it, hide this hammer again. And there we go. And I'm going to try to set this up now so that this leg is actually supporting the weight of the character. So we've adjusted how the weight will be held, right? We got the initial pose in there, and now we can adjust what direction this leg should go. To make it feel the most accurate. So I know that this probably needs to come out a little bit, it needs to be more vertical, and maybe we want to take the hip, bring it in. So even though it doesn't look like a lot, even if I just go ahead and undo you really quick, what you'll probably notice is that this pose, even where we're at right now in this lunge that we're creating, is going to look a lot more natural than this pose. Right where we started and all we had done is just kind of taken the legs and pulled them apart. That's because we hadn't adjusted the hips, we hadn't adjusted the gravity. This feels like an action figure that you just split the legs apart and tried to make them stand, which they never did. And here you see with the subtle bends and twists that there starts to feel a little bit more weight to it. And we're going to do the same thing on this back leg. So where is this leg going? How high is it? Maybe this leg here can go a little further out. Maybe it can go a little further out this way. You thought everybody here would be just want to talk about Unreal 5. Absolutely. Happy to talk about Unreal 5. Obviously, the Unreal Access came out today. Super cool stuff. Very excited to see the integration of the bridge there. Let's go ahead and tweak this ankle. Maybe even just kind of hyperextend this ankle just a little bit. Never be afraid to kind of just push the poses just a little bit, meaning even though you should feel like you're just going to move them, I'm moving like C3PO, but just moving the joints. You can pull and stretch and do a little bit of extra. The good example of that is if you could only move your arm up, right? When you're doing a pose, for example, in your real body, if you're only ever moving your character up like this, you'd never be able to do this type of motion, right? These little adjustments that you can do, right, especially in certain different parts of the body, can happen. And just general squash and stretch is something that you can still do in any type of a pose. So we're going to get this a little closer. You might have a boot or something on. I'm going to put perspective on it. You kind of see his lunge is starting to happen. And then I'm going to work on this head. So I'm going to just kind of mask this whole head here. I'm going to soften it. This is going to be a rough pose. So you're going to see some jagged edges. It's not going to be 100% beautiful. That's okay. Actually, you know what? Before I do the head, we need to get more weight in the front. Let's do this one more time. Bump, 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 bump. Mask this whole thing. And I want more weight to be going over the front. So before I get any of these arms, it doesn't make sense for me to put the arms out and do the position and put the head looking in the direction I want right now, because the whole body would eventually, if I had it perfect and I moved it forward, I would then have to adjust everything again. So I'm just going to do this one time, or hopefully one time. We'll see if I can do it myself and get lucky. Maybe even like a little twist in here. His arm was coming towards the ground. A little bit of that. Now I can come in here, just get the little piece that I want. Soften this mask up. And we'll start adjusting this. Can rotate it from here. not necessarily putting it in the spine where it's going to go every single time. I'm just putting it where I think it should be rotating from and adjusting there. It's all screen space based. And of course, you can always come back and sculpt. That's something that people don't think about. You can always adjust these poses as you see fit. So I'm going to get that one. I want the head to kind of go this way. I'm putting the point at the base of the neck here. Almost like it's rotating from the bottom of the neck, not like in the head, but at the bottom of the neck. And I'm rotating that around. So which way do I want him to look is the question. If he's kind of going like this, got one, maybe that hand down, this hand out. Is he looking to the left or to the right? I think he'll look to the left. And up. We can continue adjusting this as we see fit. Let's go ahead and start working on those arms. We got some questions from chat. Can an animation director be a director for non-animated films such as live action or anything in that nature? And also, do you have an animator? Do you have to be an animator to make animated films? Can you do both? Yes, there's some examples. Brad Bird's a good example. Brad Bird directed Mission Impossible, also Incredibles. So there's two, live action and animated film. And you do not have to be an animator to make animated films. It's a good idea to have a good understanding of the process, but it's definitely not, a specific thing that you need to know. So this arm, I'm going to bring down forward. Let's extend it. Still pretty straight, but we want to extend it just a little bit further. I'm going to take this. You can't see my hands, but I'm taking my hands off. I'm looking at my hands. I'm looking at the position, just like I was showing you or miming earlier before. Get up and do the pose. Right now, I don't care if it breaks the pose. So it's just about getting the emotion and the energy. A little bit unmasked up there. I could keep adjusting this hand. Fingers, you can get a lot of dynamism or dynamic elements of a pose out of the fingers. So don't sleep on them. It's not something I'm going to spend a lot of time on today for this test, but you can definitely get a lot out of it. Now I'm noticing that this hand isn't long enough, this arm isn't long enough to reach the ground. If I had wanted him to be like grabbing on the ground as if he's been pushed back, right? So how do we fix that? Well, the squat that he's doing, the lunge that he's doing needs to go lower, and then he probably needs to bend over a little bit more. So this is why you kind of get those first block outs out of the way when you do this pose, is if it's not looking the way you want, you can, but it won't look good to just be like, whoop, there you go, we fixed the problem. Right, that doesn't really work. You need to adjust the overall pose. I could do maybe a little stretch, like I was showing before. Like I could maybe go like this far and feel like that's still working, because that's just enough within range. But too far, and you've stretched a little long. So let's take this. Well, let's get those legs first. Leg one. Somebody was saying, was having trouble posing before. Should just do it in ZBrush. It looks really easy. It is really easy. I love posing in ZBrush. Some people really hate it. There are other ways to do it. There are other ways to, I find it's the best for anything that's concept or ideation. If you're just looking for what something could look like, I find that ZBrush is really, really excellent at that. Not something I would do for, what I'm doing right now is not what I would do in an animated film or a film, unless it was just for visualization. Obviously, you would do a full-on rig. What program is this? This is ZBrush. Let's do this other leg. we go. So I'm going to turn off my symmetry. You'll see how far I moved that lunge up on the other leg. You can see here on the thing. So I can either stretch, rotate this all the way out so that there's a little bit more of a stretch there, which I kind of like. I am switching back and forth between perspective here. I'm going to rotate this whole limb to a little bit out. Go down a little bit. Connect it to this foot here. Connect it down and out. I want to see how far can your ankle actually bend. Pretty far. Farther than that. So we'll kind of come in here. How long does the ankle? What's the degrees before you get that Achilles tendon snap? It's really what I'm looking for. And the answer is pretty far. Not to scale it though. Just try to position this in a way that feels okay. You can always come back and sculpt, as you can see. That is an important element. So now the arm is getting closer, but it's still not there, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to hide the legs again, the hips, this. And we're going to do one more quick thing. There we go. Bend them over a little bit more and probably just give them a little warp in that direction. Just a little stretch in that direction. That is stretching every shape. So if there were circles or any specific things there that we needed to look at, it might be good to just be careful of that. I don't think this hand is really going to get there unless I really compress that. So that's also something that's good to know. Not every character is going to be able to do every pose, right? They might be too lanky, too long. Jack Skellington would be able to do this pose, no problem. This character cannot. So now that's also an important thing while you're doing these poses, is kind of understanding what the limitations of your character are, what they can do, what they can't do. So I kind of want to take this thing now. I don't think that this other hammer is in the right spot just yet, so I was going to use it, but I don't want to just yet. And I want to take this back arm and basically rotate it so that the hand is upwards, and it's kind of me dragging the hammer on the ground. Maybe would it be forward if they got pushed backwards? Let's just start here. First, we'll rotate from the shoulder just a little bit. Then I'm going to mask off all this. This is the part of the body that gets warped incredibly quickly, especially if you are doing hard surface bits. Usually I try to put the bone to action line of this in the middle, and then you can rotate it, but you'll see how quickly that's going to destroy certain parts of the shapes. So we'll rotate this just a little bit, go a little bit further down. To do the same kind of thing. And I'm going to use that Alt move here to kind of extend this. You see it does kind of compress this forearm. So I'm actually just going to stretch the whole thing out just a little to try to maintain a little bit of that volume that it had. Now let's get this. I think I missed a section. There it is. To take this, and we'll just kind of spin it around. So however we want this to be held, that's where we want to go. So do I want it to be like this? The other idea that I was having was that it would maybe be something that was a little bit longer handled. This would require a different type of a hand hold, but you can kind of see what I'm thinking as far as maybe this is no longer a pushback. That something where just mask this really quickly. Right, so you can kind of have something like this. Mask those fingers, mask that thumb really quick. Use the same alt. This is not a good way to do a final pose, but you can crush the fingers in really, really quickly for a quick fist or to close in on something. You can do it all at once. You'll see it did destroy those fingers. So again, only do this if you're doing a test or you're never going to see them. Here, we can come in here now. We can kind of adjust some of these shapes. Every piece of anatomy on your body, when it moves, changes form and changes shape. So don't expect, especially if you do a large pose change, that everything's going to stay in place. That's just not how it works. So some adjustments is totally normal, expected. I can tell you that this is generally, especially from this angle, is working pretty well for me. I would have liked maybe the hand, this side, to be coming back and out a little bit. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe push this back more so that I can get a better sense of the, if we want to explore the idea that this character is being pushed. Maybe additionally, just a little bit more from the hips. What am I looking for when I'm doing this? I'm looking for a solid action line, and I'm also looking for the silhouette. So whereas before, this feels like somebody who's maybe more standing up, you can see there's more of a silhouette of just somebody standing. I'm trying to group it a little bit forward and make the action line be consistent, almost like if you remember the old animation style action lines that you look for. I'm looking for a line that goes from the top all the way out. Whereas before, it's working, but it's not as dynamic, it's not as forward. And so I can kind of come in here and do the same thing in silhouette mode. And as soon as it begins to break, like this pose here isn't really working on the head anymore. Adjust it. So probably help even more in some ways. This hand, I actually want to move it with the hammer this time. Never forget that your collarbones can rotate. So that's something I see a lot from the top view of a character, is they don't do this. And that's a huge, especially if you ever looked at quadrupeds, animals, tigers, lions, especially big cats, dogs, you'll see that there's a lot of rotation that happens in here. So having a character, you get a little bit of extra pose by that rotation. It doesn't seem like a lot when you're looking at it, but when you kind of do this, you can see that extra little bit of rotation, and you can also get a little bit of extension in there if something's happening. It will break up that stiffness. That's what I see with a lot of people doing poses, beginners doing poses especially, is they just get a little stiff, and that's because they're not thinking about all the different angles in which a person or a character can or should be posed. What things should be adjusted, So we'll have it like hanging out this way. The arm, I can tell like this maybe should come out this way. So we're breaking the silhouette. The silhouette was becoming very closed, and that was making it lose a lot of the dynamics of it. So if I can remove it from that, I can get a more exciting silhouette. So I guess then the question is what color, right, should, or angle direction should this go? And save this project because it's acting a little weird. Give it a second to do its thing. It was on the weird thing. There we go. So put this in the middle. You can do this with any weapon, any prop. Just try to get it so that it's being held in a somewhat natural way. What way do I want this silhouette to go? I can tell it was. Maybe down and back isn't bad either. Just like an opposite of what it was. That feels more natural than nobody holds the hammer upside down like that. All right. Then of course you can always just use, like I said, sculpting. You can sculpt the whole pose as well. Feel like he's getting too hunched. If certain things are getting in the way, I'll go ahead and move them. I don't like that crunch I did. I just want to explore if this would be better. Having the hand out versus in. From a silhouette standpoint, you'll kind of see what I'm getting to. That I can see the hand versus something that's kind of back and isn't really contributing to the silhouette all that much. So I kind of like that more, which means I'm going to fix the way that I'm doing this. This guy's straight out of the next Thor movie. If they have Beta Ray Bill in the next Thor movie, that would be amazing. I believe they're doing Gore the God Butcher. So we'll see. It's a better bend than what I had before. Let's begin the process of kind of just rotating this arm out, basically like a rotator cuff. Beta's Thor was hands down the best. I agree. Ragnarok was amazing. Let's sculpt this in a little bit. ZBrush isn't perfect at rotating everything, right? It's not really an animation program. It's not really a rigging program. So the way I think about it is sometimes it just needs a little bit of help. I'm using the inflate brush here to create some tension in between these two areas. That's probably going to be good enough for our first pose test. Can always continue going over this or improving it. All I got to do is now that because I use the what's it called, transpose master, I'm going to hit T pose to sub T, and now it's going to go through each one of those and pop those into the new pose positions. There we go. Some weird mismatch because I have this thing here. See, it's having trouble with that. I can still come in here. Since I don't think this had subdivision levels, I'll clone this and I'm going to append this hammer. I'm going to make it this color. I'm going to hide this. Now we have our bits and bobs here that we did not attach. I don't have the tongue. I don't have any of that stuff in there. Right, like I think if I come in here and I do layers, they're all going to be gone. That's something we didn't really deal with in this. I could come in here and open the mouth if I wanted to. You know, kind of come in like this. Let's turn symmetry off. Seems like it's not wanting to participate, but I could do it because there is a mouth in there. But this is just a test, so we don't need to do that right now. Let's get these pieces back inside. Let's tuck all those bits back inside, sir. All right. So if we want these pieces, we'll have to manually put them back on. I could have moved them, but I find that costumes tend to be less successful in Transpose Master because they change so dramatically every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and I'm going to try, first we'll try the cloth pull button brush. Move some of this. I'm going to crunch some of this up. Pull this. Technically, if they were being blown back, the cape would go like this, but that's not as cool looking. So we'll just give it a little bit of wrinkle maybe. Smooth some of that out. And then I'm going to try to mask the top. Here. And just pull it out. See how much I can get to work. It's being a little more wrinkly than I expected. It's not ideal. This would get collapsed at the body, so I don't really want that to do its thing. This I do want to try to pull downwards this side. A little too wrinkly for me right now. But we can kind of start figuring out how we want this to work. Yeah, the self-collision of those wrinkles is actually pretty solid, but it's not, because I'm moving it piece by piece, it's doing every adjustment, every stroke of the brush. It's not doing like what the final version is. I could come in here and change the direction of the gravity, point it in whatever way, right? And that might be a more successful way to make it work in that way. But I don't really want to have to deal with all that right now. All right. So that's the first one. That will be, I'm just going to give it a little pull this way as well. It's too straight back here, too straight. So with this thing. See, like it just pulled it so taut. It's not really what I wanted. We'll take that though. That'll do. You could uncheck on brush and dynamics for the strokes to have impact outside the brush radius. That's cool. Good to know. Thank you so much. I'm going to take this one. Do the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of thing, just adjusting these pieces. So now this is either he's been blown back by an attack and is about to charge, or he's sneaking around the wilderness. Either way, I'm cool with that. Oh, it didn't have a super specific goal. It initially was just a superhero pose. I think we kind of got something in there. And this is really a test. I wouldn't spend more than an hour on these, and so far I've spent an hour on this. So I would do a couple of these, and just kind of see how they go. Look at this head for the creature of the pelt he's wearing, which apparently is masked. Not super important where it goes, just that it can be seen. And there we go. We've got a pose. A pose that kind of represents some of what we're looking for. And this can be used for all different kinds of things, right? And this is now in our higher res geometry. So that's a general way that I kind of think about posing for those of you who have not or just joined the stream. I try to just do it slowly and think about what the body will be doing, how the body works. And then I also often get up and do the pose myself, which if you were here earlier, you saw me doing that. So this is a very Conan pose. You can also use this if you like. It's just a good way to see what those poses are like, what they're reading like. Often what you'll find when you start posing, or even people who are more experienced at it, is you're going to have some poses that are really excellent from one view, and then they look really terrible from pretty much every other view. So, yeah. This one is looking decent from like this pose. Decent. Getting a little weird here. A little weird here. I think it's because this leg is too far inwards, meaning I think it should go outwards. So let's try that. Oh, we'll do it later. That's a good start, though. Here, generally we got a decent pose. So I'm kind of happy with that. Now what's cool with this is if you did this with every character, so we were talking about before about the cast of characters that we're making. We have this character, and this is our sneaking pose. I do really need to adjust that leg, though. Hang on. We'll save it as a new test. I said I wouldn't, but I had to. All right, let's get this, and this. These are the only three that we want. Okay. And I only want the legs from there down. The polygroups go away as soon as you leave Subtool Master. Trying to get this last piece. See, I'm fighting it. That's why I did all those poly groups early. This is kind of why I didn't want to come back and redo this one also. It was bothering me. I just want to take it and go this way with it. Of course, it's going to rip apart portions of this. Push it this way. Smooth that back. Yeah, that'll do just fine. Checking out the new UE5 to see if your stuff will work. I'm very curious to see how that goes. If they, oh, apparently one of my subtools didn't work. It brought in this whole subtool. So there's some issue there. I don't need this. And I need this in this one. The leg did change. I just need to append this. I think I'm good. Get that color, put it on here. Color, fill object. There we go. Save that again as a final test. Greetings from Venice Beach. Greetings from Silver Lake, Los Angeles. Hello. Icon JT from Twitch asks, hey Josh, I've been trying to get in ZBrush on my own and have a lot of my experience already. However, I just can't seem to get used to the UI/keybinds and the workspace itself. Any tips, or does it simply take more time to get used to? Honestly, it just takes some time to get used to because it works completely opposite of what the standard 3D headspace is. And I think that just takes time because you having, you're saying you have a lot of Maya experience, that's actually hurting you. If you were learning ZBrush from scratch, it's actually very easy to learn. It's because you have a previous preconception of how a 3D package should work. And generally, most 3D packages work the same. However, ZBrush does not. And I think that's why people who have 3D experience struggle with it. The way that I like to think about ZBrush is it's not a 3D app, it's a sculpting app, and sculpting just happens to be 3D. So thinking of it just like a sculptor would think about it is the way that I like to approach it. So when you look at what we have here on your what do you call this? Your workspace. This big area here is your document, right? Think of this as your shelf, as your desk space. This is where you're actually sculpting, right? So anything in here is where you're sculpting, but it's a certain size. So if I zoom out, anywhere that's not on my table, my workspace is not going to be in my workspace, right? So that's an important thing to note, is that you're actually working in a specific document size and space. The next thing is you can get to anything you want to by right-clicking or by hitting spacebar. Those are the main things you'll ever need. The draw size, the focal shift, the intensity of your painting, your Z intensity, all your colors, everything right here is also right here. You can get that by hitting space, or you can get that by doing right click. So you don't actually need to do any complex key commands. You rarely actually need to go into any of these top menus unless you're looking for a specific thing. The other thing to think about and how ZBrush functions is it functions, again, think of this workspace like a physical sculptor would with clay. If you look over on the right side over here, every one of these little things is sculptures, and notice how they're all kind of stacked up. Think of this like a cubby, an IKEA cube, whatever you want, like a space on your shelf. Each one of these is its own place for a sculpture to live and to work. So this is my posed version of this sculpture, and this is my not posed version of this sculpture, right? And if you start thinking about, I'm saving a tool, which is what this is, I'm saving and loading a tools, that's in this area. So I'm saving and I'm loading things within this area here. Project is everything all at once, everything in this big box. Tools are going to be individual. So the way you kind of get into working with ZBrush is honestly just by removing previous 3D from your mind and saying, how does this workspace function? So here's all my tools. Here's all my different sculptures, right? How they work, what they do. I'm going to save each sculpture, right, within here in my cubby, in my tool shelf, is made of multiple pieces. Just like traditional sculpting, you wouldn't make everything from a single block of clay, right? It would be, hey, I'm going to add eyes to this, so I'm going to find some marbles or pieces of, small ball bearings or something to put in here. That's what this is. This is my ball bearing tool or sub tool. So tools are here, and sub tools go inside of the tools. Brushes are all within here. Honestly, you need 5 to 6 brushes. Don't worry about too much. I only use 6 standardly, and I've numbered them on my hands on my keyboard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So move, clay, standard, clay buildup, the Damien standard brush, and the inplay brush. Those are the 6 brushes that I really use pretty consistently, unless I'm trying to do something specific, like you saw me try to use that cloth brush, or you maybe might see me use the Move Elastic brush or the H Polish brush. There's certain times and places where I do go to use something else, but often I'm going to use this very small handful of what's out there. So I'm kind of liking how this pose is starting to come together. From certain angles, I think it's good. From certain angles, I don't love it. Just kind of rotating around to take a look. Let's see. I think it's from the side that it's starting to bother me just a little bit because, for example, this, how crouched this is, looks like it's not super extended, but when I get to the profile, it's very extended. Now I'm going to just go quickly add, append a cube. Go to the cube, scooch it down, make a base. Even though you can use the floor in ZBrush, I don't like using the floor because I find that it often gives me a little bit of a weird result. All right, so I have this. I'm going to Dynamesh this. I'm going to get a little sculptural element to this. Dynamesh, turn this on. That's pretty high. That's fine with me. I'm going to use this to kind of just sketch in where this could have gone. I'm going to use the thick skin feature, which is under subtool, I believe. Where did that go? Nope, thick skin. Thick skin. How thick is this? Not too bad. Okay. Carve in here, carve in here. And I think I had said like maybe they were being dragged. So right now I'm using the thick skin, which means it can't go past a certain depth, which is fine. I'm not wanting it to. Somebody's saying from Twitch, hey, I'm pretty adept at ZBrush right now, and I'm wondering what program I should learn next. Hard to know based on what you already know. And I guess what you're looking to do. I'm gonna build up like a little. I'm gonna turn this thick skin feature off. I'm gonna build up a little bit of a rock ledge behind this character. Probably eventually put some rocks and stuff back here. If you didn't notice, last week I got into doing some sound effects. A lot of requests for sound effects. This music is just really nailing it. Trying to get into it's like a duel of the Fates buildup. It's not really, but Yeah, you're right. It's getting into ZBrush. I hear exactly what you're saying from a lot of professionals or people who have used a lot of 3D before, and the first time they get into ZBrush, it's a bit of a trip because it's not at all the way that you're used to working. And I think that's really interesting because ZBrush is fantastic at what it does. It really is. It's definitely one of the more innovative products on the market. Yeah, let's just get a little texture to everything. Then I'm going to take this, they have a clay skin, what is it called? Clay. Where is it? Or is it called thick skin? Thick skin clay. It's a cool brush that kind of just moves everything around. Better used when thick skin is on. Just kind of wobble this all around. Create some undulations in the surface. And this is kind of what you would want, like, maybe if you're working on collectibles, or maybe you just want to do a statue of your own, or you're, want to do a piece of concept art. You can get pretty far with something like what I'm creating right here. Well, here comes the buildup. Maybe not. Let's just go ahead and go in here. Clip, curve, turn perspective off. Whoop. Let's turn symmetry on and try how that works. A little more equal. Clean that right up. Make ourselves a little diorama. Let's build this up again. You can keep toggling thick skin, which I think is an interesting technique that I've seen. Toggle this off and on, because it's like using clay tubes in a way. It only builds up to a certain point, but it kind of creates an interesting way of working. So either this person got blown back or they're hiking in the snow. One or the other. Now we can bring on our companion. So I was just going to say, now that we've got a pose, maybe we'll do this. We'll just screenshot this. If you hit Shift S, you can do a screenshot. Bring on our companion, who's not supposed to be this tall. Who's supposed to be like yay tall. See, they don't need to sneak down. They're just going to be walking differently. So if we were to make a sneaking or crouching or some sort of a pose, I'll just get them in here first. It's a little easier. Kind of get this going in here. So you can kind of start taking these characters, getting some life into them by posing them very quickly and then putting them together to see what they look like. I do this pretty often as a test to just see, do the characters look good together? Do they work together visually? Is there things that I would want to adjust? Is there restraints that I was seeing, like the length of the arms couldn't do certain types of poses, or they would have to be very squished to do them? Are there issues like that that I want to address? Yeah, I like doing this quite a bit. It's kind of fun. But now we have this as a test that we can bring into anything else. music really caught my interest. Close that. Check this out. All right. Having come from my experience, ZBrush was very difficult. Yeah, it definitely takes a while, and it is one of those ones that will take you a little bit for sure. Is this stream live? It's live. Camelot Lord 91. Welcome to the stream. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. We're sculpting some characters in ZBrush today. Just did a little pose of this character. We started, we got here. Let's see. We'll go, say we got like to here. Kind of like this angle too. It's like creeping angle. Like I was saying, there's some of these angles that are working pretty well. Some, not so much. So we, here to here. Probably better if we do it the other way around, just so it makes a little bit more sense. It's nice to kind of get that because you know, get experience what the characters are like, get them in the positions that you want, make sure they work. I don't think I'm going to do that for any of the rest of the characters today. I'm pretty happy with this, and I'm pretty confident that the other characters are going to fit, especially after doing this one. It's also a good way to just do this for multiple poses, multiple statues, multiple things. When I was working at Legacy, we would do this for Sideshow for providing 3, 4, 5, 6 options for what a statue would look like. You know, we collaborated on a bunch of things with a bunch of Marvel statues there. This is a very common thing. What we would do is just do rough poses and send them over and see which ones they liked, and then eventually finalize them. Need to do some homework. Thanks for the helpful tips. No worries. Thanks for joining. Do these characters have names? They do not have names. No. We have thrown some ideas around in the chat in the past several weeks, but this character here, this hero, is definitely still looking for a name. So if you happen to have a name that you think would be great, go ahead and type it in and let's see. Do you then texture and paint these characters in a separate program? Yes. Texturing and painting is usually be done in another 3D painting program like Substance, Quixel, either of those. You can also do painting. You can see there's some basic poly painting done, especially on the head of this character here. I'll show you that right now. So you can see this has kind of a red and green areas. You can go pretty far with this and do something called poly painting. It is actually painting every vertice is how it works. So, but yes, you can do that in here as well. Somebody's saying, can I buy a permanent license or is it just subscription? I believe there's still permanent licenses, but I don't work for Pixelogic, so I can't guarantee that, but I'm pretty confident that there still is. So hopefully you can find them. Ooh. Should name the character Lizardhead. I mean, it's definitely descriptive. Pretty straightforward. I think we need something more, something else that's out there. The cast of characters, so for those of you who are joining late, we have our hero, anti-hero here, reluctant hero. We have our companion. We have our creature. Their mount, who, whenever I try to do this, always acts like a really large dog and just tries to get in the way. So we're actually going to start with that one this time. You can't really place them in depth as far as I know. So this is one of the challenges of doing this kind of a thing. Probably something like this. And then there is a large mech tank that we started. Very, very rough, but you can kind of see the overall proportions of this thing. Need some iterations. We did this last stream though. I think we were saying something like this color range. And it would probably be about yay big. This is Jurassic Park meets World of Warcraft. Yeah, there you go. So that's our cast. All right, y'all. So we have about an hour and a half left in the stream. We'll be streaming till 5 Pacific today. I'm thinking about continuing working on our hero and just beginning to flesh out some of those bits. I think I know where the companion's costume will go to be pretty straightforward. I think I know where the creature is. I think I know where the hero's going. I don't particularly feel like fleshing out that mech just yet. I want to flesh out the characters a little more before I finalize what would oppose them. Space Turnip from Twitch is asking, is there magic in this world and what would it look like? That's a fantastic question. I think there would be magic. I think it would be there'd be some kind of an arcane influence for sure. What would it look like? But I feel like, I think it should be like almost like the screensaver is terrifying sometimes. I think that it would be something that is a little more like a power source than it is like, Harry Potter, like, wisps of magic and illuminating things. So I think that's kind of what I would do. Did I do the clothes in ZBrush or did I do them in Marvelous Designer? Everything that you're seeing so far and that's on the screen right now is done in ZBrush. So if you're looking at some of the clothes in here, there is some new dynamics features for the pelt that I created and this little action hero poncho in ZBrush. There's the dynamics options. You can do simple gravity and simulations for objects. You can even change the direction of gravity, and there's some cool brushes that I was showing off earlier. The cloth pull is one that I like quite a bit that you can use, for example, to pull, go down some subdivision levels, and it will wrinkle for you as well. So you can pull objects. You can do simple, pushes and pulls. So if you want something to feel like it's bunched up on the shoulders, right, but still has a draping feel, you can do that really, really quickly with the new cloth brushes and dynamic stuff. It's really, really cool. It's also really good for creating wrinkly skin. I feel like we need to finalize this character's costume. You like how that lays up the dichotomy of dinos and technology very well. Yeah, I'm a big fan of dinos, big fan of, creatures, reptile creatures. I'm a big fan of mechs and robots, so I thought that this might be an interesting world to kind of tie those two things together. Looks amazing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. So what do we do for the next step? Let's work on this character. The hammer that I did several. It's not supposed to be pink. It's supposed to be white. But I did this a while ago. It's also pretty rough, but you'll get to see some of what I'm thinking. Somebody was asking, is there going to be magic in this world? This is what I was thinking about some of the magic, that some of these circles here could basically be part of where whatever this artifact is from has some sort of a magical source that runs through the center of this and powers this thing up, and so there might be some lights and glows and special things that be happening here. So some elements on some of the characters might have some of that stuff. Let's see. Somebody is saying you're in your second Gnomon ETP class. That's awesome. Very cool. Taking fundamentals of rigging, but you're thinking about possibly taking a course on learning the basics of how to light and render your shots. Do I recommend taking texturing and shading 1 or is it okay to jump into lighting and rendering one? Lighting and rendering one definitely sounds like what you're going for, but I don't know what the prereqs for lighting and rendering one, if there are some, or if I don't know what your professional experience is, but if your professional experience basically qualifies for texturing one, or at least you know what that subject matter is, you can probably jump into lighting. But I would speak with the admissions team to who you've clearly already been in contact with to verify that. But I think lighting one sounds more like what you want, personally. All right, so I'm going to work my way up with this character. I know this is something that I want the end result to somewhat look like. I'm not 100% sold on the design of the face. There's probably a little bit of work I want to do there. I think we just keep polishing this character. That's where we'll go. Yeah, no worries, Ever6. Hopefully the classes you're taking right now are going well for you. And I think if you can get into that lighting class, that sounds like it'd be great. All right, let's start prepping this to be basically the next level of detail. Going within my folder structure here, which you can't really see because it's off screen. Just starting a naming convention, an official naming convention. Often I will do really poor naming conventions, meaning what you'll see is kind of what you see here. So I just add ones. This is the worst way to do anything, but just adding ones to the end of something. And that way, when I'm looking at my file structure, I know this is the most recent file. It's effective. It's not very clean. So I'm making a real one that looks like this. And we're going to get going on it. So I'm going to hide this. 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 And I'm going to hide this. So we got our base character here. Now I want to take this a little bit further in general across the board. You saw me do this a couple streams ago. I'll actually just load that file up so you can see it. I'm assuming it was this file. Yeah. This is where I was exploring what these shapes might have been. And so you'll see the level of detail between this and this go up quite a bit. So the actual level of design, right, is going up quite a bit. Well, that's a pose of this. So what I want to do is basically do the same thing. So going from here, where it's a little simpler, to something that's here with a little bit more design in it. And now I want to take it even further to add more complexity, more realistic shapes in general. So we're going to basically start finalizing some of this stuff. First thing I'm going to work on is likely going to be the body. Dominic McCoy asks, were these characters built completely in ZBrush? They were, yes. All right, this is as far as I've taken the body. Now the question is, how far do you want to take this? Knowing that all this is going to be covered. I don't have to take it crazy far. I would, however, like to spend some more time on the hands. As you can see, they are not amazing. The feet are going to be exactly the same problem. You can see all this stuff is really just a sketch when you get close to it. So we're going to start dialing all this up. I do have the head as a separate object. And I should have layers for this. Seems like I deleted those, but the mouth is capable of being opened. As you can see right there, there's a tongue in there. So I'm going to want to start basically getting this to not a production level, because I'm not going to be animating this, but I want to make it to the point of where if I wanted to do something with it, I could. right? Whether I want to do different poses, if I want to actually texture this thing. I kind of just want to prep this thing for the next phase. So let's do that. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this little tiny head inside this head. Fellow Gnomon instructor Don L. McCoy. Hello, Don. Welcome to the stream. I don't really need any of this. You can see that it's actually all kind of being covered, even over here, by this other piece. So I'm just going to smooth this thing into oblivion. And we go to the reverse, select this piece. I think I only want the head to be in the center area. So I'm just going to pretend. Doesn't exist. All right. So the head is going to this strap. I'm concerned about it going to this strap because there might be a weird middle ground there. So I'm going to select the body, select the head. I kind of want this to just go in a little bit. I don't want to see any of that other mesh. I could obviously cut this apart, and I probably will. Meaning, I could weld this together, make it a single mesh. That would be a smart thing to do, especially if I want to start posing, make it so that pieces can come off and on. I like treating these types of characters a lot like an action figure. I think I said that before, but basically working from the inside out once you have a good understanding of what the character will be, right? So make the nude character, the Ken doll version of the character, whatever you want to do, and then build up, add the clothes, the underclothes, which is what these straps would be. Add this armor, add the overclothes, and any additional things on top. It's kind of the way, my methodology for building up a character and making it feel like there's an actual system for as to why they would be wearing this much stuff and how thick things are and all that fun stuff. All right, I've just been dancing around installing, not actually getting to work on this. I want to work on the head, but I also want to work on the clothes. I know I could retop these. I'm trying to figure out if I want to use like ZModeler and get into some of this stuff, but it would be smarter for me to finalize the body. So let's go ahead and do that. This is where those two pieces are joining. Like I was saying, it would probably be smart for me to join these at some point into one mesh. Then I'd have to do all this work, combining this and this. I really don't want to do that because it's all underneath the body. So we're going to be fine with just these two separate elements. I do want to create a more clear distinction between the two. Looks like I already did here, which I'm fine with. Let's see if this destroys anything. I'm just going to carve it all the way back, this inside piece. And clearly that was a mistake right there. I can also turn off the coloring right now to see more accurately what I'm doing. You can see that the detail on the face is not super high res, especially when you get into some of these areas where there's a lot of brush strokes here. So we're going to finalize all this stuff. Does not have genitals. We might do a little booty short for him, though. Just, keep things decent. And this is a family stream. You can tell I use myself as reference. All right, let's keep going. Just going to mask it off. I could do a little extract and create actual underwear. Or I could just do a quick inflate, which is probably what I'll do. It looks worse. So ripped. Yeah, I think I remember when I started this, I was like, I'm just making a buff alien. And I didn't lie. Oh no, I extracted the wrong side. Oh. Sometimes I love 3D. I mean, I always love 3D, but just like the weird things that happen in 3D are just the best. One LXF1, hello. How you doing, man? Let's see. Sorry if you answered already. Do you use transpose tool for posing? I do. It breaks all of your geo and causes you to do more work. Or do you always retop and bake? Kind of a combination of both, Lee. I like to use transpose, but also ideally, the one I was doing before was a test. So when I did this piece, this pose, it was more of a test. I would have to resculpt large sections of this. But you could tell if I just hit, we'll see what this does. But if I hit all high, there'll be issues in here, but I could also just resculpt much of this without too much issue. It's really dependent on what you're wanting to do. Like this is poking through here. I would need to just poke this, put that back. You just need to be conscious of when you're doing large. The best thing, or the number one thing I would say, is like when you're doing large adjustments. So for example, say you're putting the arms down and you're going all the way up with the arms. Do not do that in one motion. Do not do that in one transpose action. Do it a little bit and go basically get it to here, make sure everything looks good. Go to here, everything looks good, and everything, then go all the way over, because that'll make the subtle adjustments different. And even if you look at like the anatomy on your body when you're doing something like that, it completely changes. So to say like it breaks your geo, it should in some ways break your geo because the anatomy is changing so drastically, at least for certain parts of the body. But like think of like what your scapula looks like in this pose versus all the way up. It's completely different. With your chest muscles, everything's completely different. So expect, especially if you're doing very dynamic poses, expect to resculpt large sections of your anatomy. Otherwise, your character's probably looking really stiff. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I was doing this. Making some underwear. Except now we can come in here and get this green on. This, where's that hammer? I like this dark blue hammer. Done. Fill object. Move this all out real quick. Point is not to draw too much attention to it. We're not really going to be focusing on his crotch for that often. It's always weird when people come by and they're like, oh, interesting. Even aliens wear underwear, though. So. Ta-da. I'm going to move these pieces down to the bottom here, above the hair. You can use the up and down arrows to cycle through all your subtools, and then you can actually use the control up and down arrows to reorder your subtools. All right, let's sculpt some more anatomy, huh? Let's finish off this character. Let's get as close as we can. We got about an hour left in the stream. I'm gonna go back and save my thing here now that we've got some underwear on this dude. This is probably where I'm gonna pull up some reference. We're gonna work on the face first. I'll likely get some teeth in here, some better teeth. So right now they're just being pulled out like this. So we're going to take everything and we're making it a little bit higher quality. Hey, you're missing out on a sweet bottom of so many layers of clothes. That's right. This whole thing really just needs to be subdivided one more time, huh? I'd say so. Let's do it. All right. I'm going to turn off my color. The color I add, often something that I do, and I learned actually while working at Marvel, was you can use poly paint, and I learned it at Legacy as well, but you can use poly paint just as painting to paint or to simulate a 2D effect. What I mean by that is, here's a really quick example. This character is obviously not made of panels and hard surface stuff, but if I came in here and I wanted to say that they were, I could just paint in. I'll turn this dynamic off so I can get an even smaller brush size. I could come in and just paint it and say, oh, this is the panel line for this. Fancy design line that goes this way, and it kind of connects, and the Mind Stone, right? Something like that. But that's just paint. And from a distance, it could actually read exactly like you want it to. It's also a really good way to ideate on designs, especially if you're thinking about hard surface stuff, right? Just painting, right? Instead of trying to sculpt it every single time, pushes it a little bit further, and you're able to visualize what the final product will be without being a more destructive manner. So I can undo all that. And what I'm doing, the reason I'm saying that, it's like I've made this red and this red and this yellow, and that when I turn it off, let's go back to white, it kind of deceives you a little bit. So I don't want to do that, and I want to just focus on the sculpture right now. Like the small bony crest in the back of his head. Yes, this is very dino inspired. There's a dinosaur that has this that I don't remember the name of it. It's sort of walks on two legs, but has sort of T-Rexy front arms, but they're a little longer. I don't remember the name of the dinosaur, but that was what it was inspired by. Vision is back. Legion is back. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Lizard? Let's eyeball. I don't think I want a lizard. I think I want like a specific type of lizard. Monitor lizard. Looking right now at these images on Google. So looking at this type of structure, I love looking at this stuff because what you can see, we talked about planes last week as well, but look at the clear plane. I can't get in with this song right now. This bass jam is not doing it for me. The clear definition of a plane right here of like where the eyelid itself is so defined, which is really, really cool. And you see this in a lot of lizards, especially. There's all kinds of, this is just monitors, but you'll sometimes see them be decorated in a really beautiful manner. And I don't know if I'm going to do scales or if this will be more like a, you know, like a hairless cat kind of a vibe. But I think I like this type. Like this is really cool. Like look at this really amazing, beautiful crest around this. It's like some sort of an, I don't know what this is, angelfish. So I'm looking at stuff like this. How are the forms working on these characters? How deep are the folds? How many folds are there, right? This is obviously some sort of chameleon. This one has more of a standard eye socket, kind of like what we have. Right, so maybe this is a more applicable piece of reference. So I'm coming over here, looking up something that is similar to what I sculpted, and I'm going to use this as my reference point. All right. Not sure who you are yet, but I'm interested. Thanks, Nick. My name's Josh Herman. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to Gnomon Art Jam. I'm going to take this over here. I got my reference up. I'm just going to kind of use this as a guideline. Something that's important here is I'm not here to just focus on the forms and refine the forms. I'm actually wanting to push the design. So if something feels like it's not working, I'm going to fix it. I really will want to try to fix that now as I'm kind of getting to the point of saying, like, I'm going to make the final version of this head. So, like, I don't like right now, I don't like how close this wrinkle that I've created goes to the head. I need to adjust this a little bit. Otherwise, there's no way to fit a top eyelid in there. So I'm going to try to tweak this a little bit. But not change the character entirely. So that's the real trick of all of this. I also have a really heavy overhang, meaning like it's like it's enclosing and swelling on the eyeball, which is weird. So I'm trying to not do that as well. And this part of the sculpting phase for me is problem solving. It's not especially the most creative part. Or problem solving, and it's more about making the forms look good. You're going through Twitch trying to find ZBrush content creators, trying to kick the video game assets. Trying to kick the video game's assets and dive deeper into 3D world. Can't wait to learn. No worries. We have plenty of these if you're interested in watching ZBrush sculpting. I do a lot of ZBrush sculpting. We do this every week on Wednesdays from 2 to 5 Pacific time. So everything that you'll see on screen today, whether it's this character, this is a pose of this character, the companion for this character, the villain for this character, or like the mountain of this creature for this character, is all on our YouTube channel. We have some of our videos uploaded on Twitch, but if you go to Gnomon, youtube.com/Gnomon_school, I think you'll see probably 50 different videos that will show different characters and stuff being created. Mostly sculpting, not really getting to final assets, but feel free to dig around and binge content if you want. That's what it's there for. When I do this, I'm also here refining forms. We talked about forms again last week. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to clear out those tools. I'm going to load this tool one more time, so you and I can see the before and after. This is before, and this is after. I'll get that have the same color on it, so we're looking at the same thing. And what I mean by defining forms is when I from a distance, the sketch works really, really well. When I get close, I say, what is going on in this eyelid area? Where is the actual eyelid, right? Especially if we compare it to, I'll put this over here, we'll get a little up angle on it, and we'll look at like this. Where is the actual up lid of the eyeball, right? Where is the eyelid going to be able to close? Where's the inside, or I think it's called the caruncula on a human, where the tear duct would be? Does it have a tear duct or not? Where's that going to collect, right? Because right now it's just kind of an amorphous shape. It's describing it, but it's not necessarily really communicating it down to like a pretty finite level of detail. Omar Aweda is in the chat. Hello, Omar. Hope you're doing well, man. So that's what we're doing here today, is try to clean that up. All right. Hide this body, hide this underwear. The tongue there is actually being interesting to look at, so I'll keep it. All right, let's get this up. Got my reference up again. I'm going to mimic some of the shapes that they're doing here. There's no harm in stealing from nature. Until I'm working more specifically, because I get really quiet. So if you all have any questions on anything, let me know. Just going to define some of these creases. So, especially in reptiles, a lot of these creases where these scales would be get very deep. That's kind of nice because it also gives you a clear definition of where something begins and ends. Probably going to have to go even one level up on this at some point. So I got to define right now. Again, this will be before and after. Let's see what we're looking at, but defining this shape to be a little bit more refined. Can you give a quick breakdown on how to bake high-res displacement maps? Oh, bake high-res into displacement maps, or is that always done in another program later on? You can do it in ZBrush. I would recommend other programs, though. And you kind of need a high-res and a low-res, and usually you need UVs. This doesn't have any of that in there. So not the best subject matter to demo on. I want to play with just a little bit here is this shape. If I change the eye shape dramatically, there's definitely a change. Kind of give it a more human eyelid, which I'm okay with. Generally, I don't think it's changed it wildly, though. I might come in here and just pull this up or down a little bit. I was saying before I didn't like how that was kind of overlapping the previous shape. It is okay if the shapes overlap. That's actually not a problem. It's creating good form by overlapping them. But I don't want it to just be arbitrary. I don't mind just pulling it down or using my inflate brush here. It's a good way to just create that overlap. You have to be careful with the inflate brush because if you go too far with it, the meshes themselves will do this kind of a thing, like a Venn diagram, and you'll have weird pockets. And that can cause issues whenever you're baking normal maps, displacement maps, or if you're doing 3D printing, it basically creates a negative hole sometimes in the object, unless you dynamesh the whole object so it's like a skin. That can be fine. Definitely a little humanizing with this one. Continue, maybe even pushing this up. So the only way to UV this model you have is to manually go through and retop the model. The model is somewhat retopped. It's Z-remeshed already. So you'll see it has okay topology. I can UV master this right now and it'd be fine. It's just, that's not really the part of the process I'm in right now. All right, let's figure out what's going on here now. I like the shapes that we have going on. Generally, I'm pretty happy with that. I maybe want to get a little bit more peak in this eyeball. You can see there's a kind of very clear peak right here, which I've lost. That might help a little bit. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the stream. I really know what I'm going to do with this section, though. It's working, but it's all like very one round shape in here. And that form is just a little permanently aggressive. What I mean by that is if this is his neutral position, it's basically impossible for them to show any other emotion, which is a problem. Also going to kind of basically fill out some of these bits here. Also, even what I'm doing right here, you can maybe see as I'm adding an additional plane. So this line right here was not really here before, and this is what I'll go and do over the whole character. So before was the shape at its highest resolution, and so you can see I'm basically defining that there is an arc there. I like what's going on there, but I want to adjust it, make it a little bit more clear, and make it just fit a little bit better. So also make it cast better shadows. Alright, for the constant UV retopper question, so is ZBrush not good for hard surface like boots, accessories, etc. that need to be retopo or poly modeled? However, ZBrush are good for organics. ZBrush is good. You know, Lee, I don't necessarily know what your goals of your project are, and that's really going to be the first question you're going to have to ask as far as what level of topology is good for you. I can tell you that if I'm doing something for a 3D print, topology doesn't matter in any way, shape, or form. Right? It doesn't matter if I Dynamesh the whole time. It doesn't matter if I UV or not. If I'm doing something for a game, right, then it's completely different. You know, if I'm doing something for a film, it's going to be completely different. So ZBrush is good for creating base meshes that get you close enough to a final mesh if you don't really care about the topology. I would wager that any rigging artist who looked at a ZBrush mesh would cry out in fear and terror if you told them that was your final mesh for something to be that animated, right? Especially organic stuff. ZBrush for something like a hard surface object is not going to hold your creases. It's not going to hold your edges. It's not really going to hold any of that. So it's not a great candidate for creating a final mesh in that way. It's definitely not going to hold your silhouette, which is kind of the number one thing that you want, especially if you're making it for games. That guy looks cool. Thank you very much. I always start at the eyes and start working out. I'm going to actually make it look a little bit smoother than it kind of was. How I ended up working with Gnomon. Oh, I'm trying to do something. I ended up working for Gnomon, started working for Gnomon a couple years ago. How? Just opportunity came across, and it's interesting and appealing and something I wanted to do. It's from YouTube, Zinthork X Inorth X. I don't actually know how to pronounce your name, but welcome back. Regarding topology, what are the key differences between game and movie requirements? The number one requirement is going to be poly count. You know, I know there's a lot of talk about Unreal 5 and all the amazing amount of polygons you can have, but poly count and texture size are the big two things that will separate a real-time asset versus a film asset. And that just comes down to the requirements of them running in real time, right? So if something is running in a game, it has to be rendered minimum, very likely, of 25, 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second. Offline rendering, and something done for a film, TV show, etc., can render for hours at a time for a frame. So if you think of it that way, as far as what the requirements are, it kind of breaks down somewhat simply, because it's basically you need to have less polygons, you need to have less textures of smaller sizes, so that you can render that fast. So Soros from Twitch says, fairly new to ZBrush, at the corner of the eye, geometry is not enough to work with, right? So in that area, you would divide it more to get more geometry to work with. However, when you are building up parts like that, could you not just use Sculptress, work on all the problem zones, and then reproject it? Yeah, you could. There's a lot of ways to do this. Again, kind of going back to the question of topology, the reason that it's not enough in this area is because it's going the wrong direction. So if I actually move and rotate, see how the areas where the geometry, if I go down to the lowest level and look at it, the areas where the geometry is flowing, it is enough geometry. But because of the direction of how it's actually crossing polygons, meaning if I go down low enough, you'll see here, it's breaking this polygon in half. It's breaking this polygon in half, this one in half as well, and this one in half. It's creating a bad string of polygons, and so it creates that really faceted look here because it just has to. So it's not that there's not enough polygons, it's that the polygons are going the wrong direction. So I could fix this by retopologizing, right? I could find other ways to fix it, but yeah. So here you can see I'm just me going slowly. I'm going to go relatively slowly through the rest of this model because I want to only do it once or twice as I update it. But you'll see I'm adding small planes here. So I added a small plane. I'll just kind of point them out to you in case you can't tell. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then a lot around the eyeball itself. But what you'll notice is that there's little gatherings of highlights in all those areas, especially if we go back and forth. So you'll see here, it was somewhat defined that there was a plane there, and there was a plane there, and there was something here. But as I added subdivision levels, it got a little rough and a little unclear, and I'm just redefining what those shapes are. From a distance, it will also help the character read. You notice that it's not necessarily changing what the character is looking like. It's just defining those areas with a little bit more intention. Looking rad. Brian, hello. I miss you. How are you? Gotta catch up soon. Do this around the eye, and the eye always takes the longest time. There's a lot, especially if we're looking at some of the reference we were looking at. Right? Look how many wrinkles there are, just how much complexity goes into these zones. I don't know if I'm going to go crazy with scales, like I said, but yeah, you'll just see how much it is. It's really in here. Like, this is amazing. This little strip of scales, and then how it builds up to more from very delicate small scales, fairly intentioned scales around the eyelids. They even have a color around them, and then very large scales down here. So I don't know how crazy I'm going to go with any of that, but it's stuff that I'm looking at, and part of why I'm a little slower around the eyeballs. I guess to answer the question about the eyelid of, it's not enough for me to work with there. It's not, but I can also get it to where it's close, and then, at the end reproject or add topology. Something that you shouldn't be afraid of as a modeler, as an artist, especially when you start getting into this, is being willing and able to adjust geometry, the flow of geometry or anything like that, because you will absolutely have to do it. You will have to do it in production at some point. Change a character, change a model, change something about it. You need to know that process of what it's like to pass it back and forth between softwares, to update, to reproject. You will never, almost guaranteed never, especially when you're starting out, get the model done on the first try. You'll submit it for review, and somebody will say, no, make these changes. Whether it's the rigging team, whether it's your lead, whether it's somebody else, the animation team, they will all give you feedback at some point that you have to change it. So getting used to the workflow of adjusting things is actually really important. I'm going to define some of these planes here. I'm going to go down a couple levels. I'm just going to begin smoothing. Smoothing at lower levels, especially lower levels like this, can create naturally very good planes. So if I smooth and I smooth and I smooth, doing better at, you see that it creates a plane right in here. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm doing that with the standard brush. I'm coming out with a standard brush and just doing very simple lines like this. Also trying to understand what exactly these shapes are. Are these muscles? Are they tendons? Do they really do anything, or are they just interesting shapes? Some of them are just interesting shapes, and I'm going to be okay with that. Some of them should be bone. If they are bone, they shouldn't be wobbling about so much. So I'm probably going to define that a little further. So like this is a really wobbly, so you can see the top here, it's pretty clear there's a line, there's a line, there's a line, and then a line. If you look at this plane, and here it's all over the place. I'm not saying you can't have shapes that do this, they're not going to read as well. So I want to find a defined place for it to do that. Add some structure to this. Were there moments that you got feedback you didn't agree with? Of course. Of course, that happens in every job, though. Sometimes where concepts were chosen that I didn't think were the right choice. Sometimes where I thought that something would work better one way versus another way. But being in any big project is a collaboration. And you need to be willing to and able to work in a way, just making it look like a donut. Work in a way that the people downline from you can pick up and work with something. So you still got to do it, even if you don't agree. This is kind of where I was hoping to create some of those wrinkles, and I'm realizing that just the structure of how these wrinkles is actually set up doesn't really work. And you put a bunch of little wrinkles here, and they can still live there. Why would they live there? Only if this part of the mouth was moving a lot would these wrinkles ever be created. So it's possible that would happen. But if they were from movements within the eye, they would be being created here, not here. So even though I think these are appealing, they either need to be moved to be something like this, or they need to kind of be adjusted. At the end of the day, they kind of serve the same purpose. So when people come in and they ask to this stream, especially, or in general, people ask, how long is this going to take you? How long does this character make? And I always tell them it depends. This is part of the reason that is because to get something to this point doesn't take that long. I think I sculpted this character on stream and within a stream or two, so it's 3 to 6 hours when we did just the body. To finish it though, to come in and really go over every plane of the body, every part of the body, and make it as good as you can is a different conversation. You said always be prepared for reviews/changes. Does that mean you have had to potentially recreate elements such as surface noise, alpha brushes? Basically, you recreate 10 steps back for one change. Yes, all the time. Hard surface models are a great example. Let's say you've spent I'll use painting to illustrate this, but let's say you have spent a long time on the surface and you have painted this beautiful, you have worked, and this is a poly model at this point. On this surface, you create these beautiful series of scales and really intricate patterns, whatever they are, right? And they go across the surface and they connect in these really beautiful ways, and the tolerances, everything looks wonderful. And they say, that looks really good. This is looking really nice. But we need the whole body to look like this. We don't want you to move the lines. We just want you to change the overall shapes that look like this now. We don't like how it ended up looking. You have to go all the way back and undo all this work because it's very difficult to make that work look the same on another shape, right? So it's very common that this is just kind of the way that it works, is that an underlying form issue or overall silhouette change or design change or character change for some reason will affect the usually near the end will affect how many stages back you have to go. So you have to be willing and able to create ways that change it, right? Or maybe it's, this looks great. We're loving how this is going, but we want to change his eyes so they look like this. Keep everything else there, but just do that, and then give them, some big. We need to make them more human. You need to make some human eyes in there. It's like, oh, yeah. I mean, everything else can stay the same. You just want the entire eyelid and all of the eye changed. Sure, like you can't just stretch this around, and you can try, right? But you're going to have to remodel, resculpt, retopologize, retexture that entire area. So just that's why I'm saying be prepared for changes, be prepared for reviews, and that's why I was also saying it doesn't really matter, when you retopologize, when you do all that kind of stuff, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to adjust to whatever the needs of the project are, and you might need to be able to go back several changes, several iterations to actually resolve certain issues. How long for Groot? Hard question. I think I had 9 iterations of Groot, and that was the only concept work. So that's probably 2 to 3 months of that character. Yeah, Lee's saying, being willing to make that sacrifice for your own work. Absolutely. You need to be able to be self-critical of your work. If something isn't working, you don't like something in your own work, somebody else isn't going to like it either, very likely. If you know it's a better change, somebody gives you feedback, and they're like, hey, this is fantastic, all except for this thing. You can leave that thing in there, but it's going to make the piece worse. Whereas if you just spent the time to fix it, it will suck. It will suck to fix it. At the end of the day, it will be better. So I'm just changing the structure of these forms. This is after, and this is before. Is changing it subtly, which I'm okay with. I'm very okay with that. I haven't really gotten to pore level detail. We're getting to some tertiary details here, tertiary forms. I think it might be nice to have another wrinkle in here. What am I sculpting? Is this what you're imagining? What the washes hot tubs 24/7 look like? It looks like seen some things wasn't meant to see. We're sculpting an alien hero creature. I'm going to show everybody what we're working on since it's been a while. This is our character here. This is the coloring. Kind of like this gray version as well. And we're starting to make the final version of the model on the head. Have I seen the Eternals trailer? Of course. I think it looks incredible. I think Eternals looks really good. I'm very excited for Eternals. The cinematography is beautiful. I love that they're introducing the Eternals as an idea and concept. I like the cast. Big fan. I think the headpiece looked cheap. Yeah, that happens sometimes, but I think it's hard to tell from teaser trailers. Entire characters sometimes change in teasers from when a teaser trailer to the actual trailer comes out. Or to the actual trailer, when the actual movie comes out. And if your biggest complaint is that a headpiece looked cheap, I think that it means that the movie's probably going to be pretty good. How do you cut out some of the part of the model to detail it? Holding down Control and Shift, you get this green box. So I have that. I can hold down space to move it, size it up, and it will remove any polygons outside of that area. It's not disappeared. They're not deleted. They're just hidden. The F is the Eternals. Just Google Eternals. The Eternals trailer. Following up on another thing you said, how do you criticize your own work before showing others? Difficult question, you know. Oh, not a bad question at all. The way that I do it is I take breaks. It's the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody is just take breaks and come back with fresh eyes. Often I think if you work on something for a really long time, you kind of get numb to it, for lack of a better word. You get blind to it. So what I'll do is I'll take the character. Let's say we're just working on this head. I'll go like this. I'm hitting Shift S to take a screenshot. And I'll leave it like this. Or maybe I'll export this as a document. I'll do a screenshot. I'll put it up. And I'll walk away. Maybe I'll put it into Photoshop if I want to get extra fancy. I'll walk away. I'll go get a coffee. I'll go get some food. I'm going to go do whatever, right? And as soon as I come back, I sit down. It's the first thing I see. I'm looking at it not as a structure, not to start sculpting right away. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to evaluate it. And that's how I'll start. Right, so let's do that now. We got 25 minutes. So let's copy this. Okay, copy. Let's open our Photoshop. I haven't taken a break, but I'll take a break with you. We're coming over here. Create new. Great. Paste. Cool. Zoom in. All right, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm basically taking a break, looking at the chat. I'm going to have a little drink of water, pretending that I haven't looked at this thing, even though as soon as I look over to this video here, I see it, which is defeating the purpose. But from a 3D standpoint, I find removing yourself from the 3D element is really important because you're looking at it like it's 3D, and it's not 3D. Well, it is, but when you come back and you look at it in a different manner, it changes it. So if I was looking at this right now, I just took a little, hour break, 20-minute break. Let's just get in here and dial in. What do we not like about this? Get a red pen. Be your own art director. Right? Let's even spend a little bit of time as we're pretending to not look at this object, cleaning this up as if I was going to present this to an art director. Make this one. There we go. There we go. Just a little presentation action. Get that cursor out of there. Beautiful. Wonderful. I say, hey boss, I sent this over to you. What do you think? Take a look. All right. Now I'm putting myself in the headspace of the boss. What do I not like about this? Let's make a smaller pen here. The boss, I'm going to come over and I'm going to say notes for Josh. Okay. I don't like this form here. Don't like how this form is very formless. It looks like an ear. Is it not an ear? From this angle, it's okay. But from this angle, it's just an additional, kind of lump. It doesn't really contribute too much. There's something going on here, so I want to focus on this area. This is a really big bulge in the neck in this angle. Is this bulge working or not? Look how big this is. Should it have a peak? It doesn't really have an apex except for kind of here. So I'll say doesn't fit. Apex. Teeth. Not really sure what's happening here in the mouth. Like, this is cool. This is working really well. This is a total unknown. I don't know what's going on here. I don't like the way that these lips in general, I'll undo those big squiggles. Maybe I can't. We'll just add that back. I do not want to liquefy. For some reason, I actually accidentally hit the liquefy hotkeys. This is a no. Just no, that doesn't look good. It's too straight. Too straight. This is okay. I kind of like this. Resolve. You know, again, think of when you're sending this to yourself, like you're sending it to your boss, and then pretend to be your boss. I guess you can't see everything I'm doing. Let me get out of this view. Resolve this. This doesn't fit. The ear, the apex isn't working. This line, no, too straight. There's something in here. Feels boring. There's not a lot of form changes in here. It's just like a solid straight line and a solid straight line. It's kind of working from here, but it's kind of in this zone that we're looking at. This needs to be resolved. This needs to be defined. This is too many lumps. Too lumpy. It's a good starting point. So kind of just taking a step back the first time you sit down and saying, what is it that needs to be improved on this? You can do this on the whole character. You can zoom into individual pieces, right? It doesn't really matter. And I think treating it as an image is really important, because it's no longer you're spinning around it, looking at it, focusing or fighting on what the forms are going to be or anything like that. Just like sit down and say, like, what's working, what's not working. Have I seen Jupiter's Legacy? I have. My wife and I watched the whole thing. It was pretty good. It was pretty brutal. Do you have your own personal way to represent work? Do you have your own deck style? I assume you're talking about like a pitch deck. No, I do not. Sternocleidomastoid. It's huge. This thing is massive in here. It's really big, but I don't know if it's really working. I feel like it needs a couple definitions. Would the art director also draw suggestions or just call out errors? It depends. Depends on. Sometimes maybe it'll be a paint over. So what I did here was just like notes. Like, here's my things I would say to work on and fix these. You know, this is like, fix this. Maybe it needs some suggestions. This is something that doesn't need a paint over. But if we were doing a different type, like let's do a paint over. So now I'm just going to, using the same brush, make it a little bigger. I'm just going to alt click wherever I'm painting to kind of create a paint over effect. So I know that I want to create, let's kind of highlight some of these areas here. So like this ear was an area we wanted to fix. So let's make the paint over. It depends sometimes on the level of the artist, meaning are they junior staff, senior principal, like how much art direction do they need? It just kind of depends. What makes a good art director? Somebody who can communicate what they want to be changed is the biggest thing very well. And ideally they have a vision about it. So, all right, let's focus on a couple of these areas. We'll focus on maybe this area, this area, this area. We'll just do a couple of them. It doesn't hurt to go this way as well if you feel like you know what you want, or this can also be a way to explore designs. Brian Wynia, who was in the chat earlier, is a good artist who does a lot of this and will basically create more design options this way. But I think like if this ear kind of went up a little bit more, maybe if it was just less intrusive in what it's trying to be, and the actual little thing maybe kind of came up this way. Just a little thing. So let's see if that helps the problem. What else did we talk about? This doesn't fit. That's what I was doing. Apex. This piece feels like this is just really curved right here. So it might just need is maybe not the ideal brush for what I'm using right here. Kind of needs to turn in earlier. So we're going to create the apex here. This resolve. Like, what is going on? Where is it a nostril? Is it not a nostril? You already have a nostril. So what is this? Is it just a bunch of little holes? Let's make a bunch of little holes. Let's give them a couple more. Maybe not in a perfect triangle. And like, just kind of figure out what they are. This music right now, though. Let's get rid of this one. It's just changing the shape subtly. Teeth? No. These are all kind of making the same comment here. More defined. I already did that. Oh, that's that one. Yeah, so let's do this. These teeth need a lot of work, so it's like, is this going to be teeth? Also kind of come in here and do this kind of a thing. You are allowed to photo bash your own paintings or your own assets. Where does this line go, I guess, is a question. Is there a lip on this? Makes it definitely more prehistoric looking, I think, but you can kind of get the sense of what I'm going for. So, you know, as we're talking about like diagnosing and art directing, basically, you can go a bunch of different ways on it. So sometimes maybe an art director will provide paint overs and feedback like this, saying, change it this way. Sometimes this could be handed off to a concept artist. So maybe it's not the art director who's going to give you paint over and feedback, but they're going to give it to the concept artist who's working on it and saying, you know, hey, can you work with so-and-so and get this figured out? That was the way that I always like to work the most. And even in my team at Cloud Imperium, I tried to urge the concept artists to work closely with the modelators to try to resolve the issues on their own. I found that it just made it give them more ownership of what they're working on. But also just a little more fun. It's also great if you're going into doing the process I'm doing now, which is, you know, trying to basically finalize the final model, because you can come up here and be like, oh, and don't forget, he's got a big scar. Like, you obviously he's not going to have a scar, but you know, you could get into more details as far as, you know, what's going to happen and what the character is, and who they are and all that stuff. You can get a little bit further. You can take it further. You can test out colors. You can do all different kinds of stuff. Question from YouTube. Timothy Liepenberg. Do you always keep the topology in the back of your mind, or do you not worry about it until it needs to be retopologized? I don't worry about it until it needs to be retopologized. No need to fret if you don't have to. What were my other notes? Teeth. All right, so we did address the teeth issue, except I think I deleted my actual paint over, so let's undo quite a ways. There it is. I deleted the scar, the paint over, not the scar. So let's adjust that again. Make it a little clearer. We'll just assume that from the side view we'll use these teeth again. I think I turned them down a little bit, so we'll try that. Just kind of block in those shapes. I only paint as far as I need to it's not distracting, so I don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to make it look photoreal. Maybe the crown a little longer, be more appealing. That's a good idea. Let's try it. Just get less and less aggressive is my only concern. You can also go the opposite, obviously. I won't put just a subtle curve, maybe. That will maybe address some of the issues I have here. Is Ghost my favorite movie for the whole pottery? No, Ghost is not my favorite movie. I love a Patrick Swayze movie, don't get me wrong. My favorite is definitely either a toss-up of Roadhouse, Point Break. But looking at a dead zone in here that I don't love. I'll have to keep working on that specific area so we get a solution there. But that's more aggressive solution, at least what I have right now. So that's a good starting point. And then it was kind of this area, and I would probably just come in here like with a darkerish color and maybe propose that there's like a plane that kind of fills this out, maybe, or a couple planes that create some shapes within here. A lot of talk about planes in the past couple of weeks, huh? There's something in here, I don't know. That makes roughly like this shape. Whatever this color is should go on the top. Something like that is kind of what I would propose as a general graphic to say, like, let's improve this piece. And that's just coming from the notes that we did. So are these perfect solutions? No, but they're good starting points. So I can save these as I will. Come over here, 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 here. Head paint. Notes. Save this as a JPEG, so I have it for later. Then I come back and I say, okay, pull open my notes. I didn't end up saving it as a JPEG, so let's just do that. Voila. There it is. So now I can have this. Close this, close this. All right. Now that I've got basically my art direction, I've got my feedback for myself, I can start working on that. So I can say, okay, what was I doing again? Oh yeah, I wanted to maybe address this area here. I want to address this area at some point. I'd like to resolve this. I'd like to change the teeth direction. I'd like to finalize this area. And then kind of this area. So these are all the areas I need to focus on, which is basically the whole head. So, you know, you just go in and start doing them one by one. Find ways to fix it. So I want to pull this back, but do I need to pull the whole thing back or just portions of it back? I want it to feel like it's a really sharp shape at the bottom, or should it be a looser, rounder shape at the bottom? Those are all decisions that will depend on what the goal of the project is, and you know what you want it to look like. But I just find it as a growing process, right? It's always going to be something where it's evolving over time, and you know, heard somebody call it once a drinking game, but iterative being a drinking game word, where every time you say that you have to take a shot because it gets said a lot. But that is the way that I work, which is, you know, I'm going to keep building slowly on the same foundation over and over and over. Sharper shape. Rodin had the same workflow. I didn't know that. I changed the ears, so one thing I changed. Trying to make them more of an aggressive shape. And from this angle, push them up. Come in here. Define this. Maybe bring this down a little bit. Let's mask this off. We can do the big changes really quick. We only have 2 minutes left, but to get the big changes done doesn't take too long. I was proposing to myself to basically pull this down and add some of those teeth in there at some point. And you'll probably have to change one of these forms in here because they got really kind of wobbly, and now it looks like a mistake right here. So this will probably have to go away. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then we can kind of pop back and forth real quick. And this is why I love loading the older subtools. You can pop back and forth between them. So sometimes I'll like something more from what I did before. Right? Like this has sort of a weird smile to it. And this is starting to lose some of that. So maybe I don't like dropping it as far as I did. Maybe it needs to have a curve up at the end. Sort of that pterodactyl face is getting lost before. That was the suggestion for myself, but I don't really like how it ended up turning out here. So going a little bit closer back to what we had. Still keeping some of the form adjustments I made. I think we do like a general little arc here. So I'm going to keep working on this. I'll probably work on this next stream as well, trying to get this character more finalized. And then once we've got a head pretty well defined, I think I'm going to 3D print this thing. And we'll be done. Oh, not done. That'll be the next step. All right, everybody. It is 5 o'clock. I'm going to save this. Make sure I'm saving the correct file. Show everything. Yeah, this is the correct one. So you can see the differences. There's not a ton of difference, but the fidelity and the quality is getting there. So it's going to take a couple more hours of that type of work. It's less of a sketch. So save that, put it here, close all this stuff out, and that's going to be it for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today at the Art Jam. My name's Josh Herman again. We'll be doing this again next week from 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific. Tomorrow evening on our stream, we'll be doing a panel about working and learning virtually. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check out our Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook channel. And we'll have that from 7:30 p.m. I think to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So check that out. Looks like there was a link that was just put in here. Let me go ahead and grab that up so you can kind of see what we're looking at here. Oh, I can't click on the link, but it's here for you to look at. There, it's in our chat. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much again. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you here next week.